two sets of connections can easily be made, and then it'll all be a question of sequencing those two connections or those two sequences built out of the connections. We first have three statements directly connected. We have a connection between D and C. D introduces the government, well, the Congress. It makes a phrase which connects it with C directly. D says, after the disastrous Janata experiment in the late 1970s, Mrs. Indira Gandhi's Congress rode back to power on the promise of a government that works. Key phrase, a government that works. We connect that with C, which says, perhaps the NDA government should go to town with a slightly altered slogan, a government that learns. Of course, those of us who know that Congress and NDA are not compatible, for them, it is good to know that the explanation for this is given in the in statement B. It's not that we are talking about the Congress being part of the NDA government in some alternate universe. No, not that. It's just that we are talking about two different governments. So back in the 1970s, the Congress government, Mrs. Indira Gandhi's Congress, rode back to power on the promise of a government that works. Perhaps in the case of the NDA government, the government should go to town with a slightly altered slogan, a government that learns. So we first get a pair in DC. Further, we can connect B with C directly. Statement B says, because the best thing that can be said about the government that is bowing out of office is not that it made the Indian economy grow faster, which it didn't, despite what the government's media managers claim, but that it learned on the job, made course corrections, and in final analysis, got many things right. But that it learned on the job, that is the most important aspect. So a government that learns and it learned on the job. So we can connect B to C right here. After this, we get another separate pair in A and E. A says the average growth rate that the government delivered may be no great shakes. So not that the government delivered a very high growth rate, but you feel a but coming in. But it has junked many of its original protectionist attitudes and learned that India has a lot to gain from freeing business and opening up the world. So after A, which says, so this is not true, but B immediately comes in. It says, but it has junked many of its original protectionist attitudes and learned that India. So in the word learned, we have the word of a government that learns still going on. So we can clearly see that first off, A and E form this pair. Second off, they come after D, C, and B. So we put that here, A, E, and that gives us our final sequence. This is exactly the sequence of statements. So our answer is DCBAE.